welcome to Brazil for the start of leg 4 of the ocean race. The 14th edition of this global race has challenged our sailors to the extremes of the Southern Ocean, long, sleepless miles alone, and now they take up the adventure again, this time leaving the Brazilian coast to head north to Newport, Rhode Island. All our teams have been hard at work before today, either repairing their high-tech foiling and mocha sailboats, recovering from injuries, or enjoying the change of pace which the warm Brazilian welcome was ready to give. The Ocean Life Park has been a hub of activity, both on the water and ashore, and the sailors have found it hard to leave. But the race is about to start. The points are about to be won as leg 4 is about to begin. Well, joining me for commentary today is Sam Davies, who was on board with Term on the last leg. And Sam, as we're looking out on the water today, very different from our last leg departure. The breeze is going to be tricky.
Yeah, Niall, well, it's great to be back in the commentary box, and yeah, happy to be in a warm, dry one. It's looking rainy out there, light winds, but we do have forecast for the wind to build, so it should be good.
And we do have a little bit of current here on the water, Sam. I mean, are the sailors, how much does the sailors going to need to factor that in?
The current is a big factor, right? Especially at the start when you're just at the Itajaí River entrance, and at the start the wind will be lighter, so the current will have some consequences on the race.
Well, this race is, of course, just leg 1 of 7 that takes the teams all the way around the world, a journey that started back in January in Alicante, Spain.
Now leaving this stop in Brazil, the boats head north across the equator and up to Newport on the east coast of the United States. The fleet then returns to Europe on another double points leg with a transatlantic to Aarhus, Denmark, followed by a flyby in Kiel, Germany, en route to The Hague in the Netherlands, and finally into the Mediterranean with the grand finale, this offshore leg to Geneva, Italy.
That is the journey that lies ahead for all of our sailors. But right now, the focus is on this small piece of water just in front of Itajaí. And the question is, exactly what is the weather out there? Well, it's been changing all day. We've seen plenty of rain coming over. One reason why the humidity is so high, and that has made it incredibly hot and sticky for the sailors. But we do have wind, enough wind to race at the moment, and certainly enough wind to make it a little bit challenging round those corners. All of our teams have been studying the conditions. They sailed through this patch of water before, even if it was a few weeks ago. But indeed, on Friday for the import race, even in those light winds, we saw some late surprises at those marks. So anything could happen out on the water. But which team is going to perform out here? Which team have got themselves in the best form for the leg start today? That is the question. Let's take a closer look at each of our teams taking part in this next leg. First up, Team Wholesome PRB, and Frenchman Kevin Escoffier has had a near perfect first half of this race, but there are cracks appearing in this team's armour, even if only very small at this point. They came second on the last leg, and a small mistake cost them a podium finish in Friday's import race. They're bringing new crew up to speed as well, so perhaps more teething problems to come. Team Militia and another team with a change. Once again, Boris Herman is stepping off and letting Will Harris take over as skipper. The young British sailor picks up the reins after the team won the last offshore leg, but the advantage they gain from the heavy, big boat shape that they have could all be played out, and there are lighter winds ahead. 11th hour racing team. Charlie Enright's team had a very difficult journey to get here with multiple breakages on board, nearly forcing them to retire. But that is all past news. And after winning the import race here in Itajaí on Friday, they have regained confidence in the boat and themselves. For Bioterm, skipper Paul Mayer and Mariana Labateau have been joined by Alan Roberts from the UK and the Olympian and ocean race winner Marie Riou stepping on board. A second in the import race on Friday was followed by Paul describing his boat as having worked flawlessly around the racetrack. Let's see if they can find that form again. And lastly, Guyot Environment Team Europe. They are struggling to find their form. They were last in the overall and import series, and of course they had to retire from the leg from Cape Town to here in Brazil. But they've had time to get the boat in fighting form as well as resting the sailors, and the crew lineup hasn't changed, a clear indication that everyone on board is refusing to give up. Well, how are the overall scores lining up at the moment with 3 legs completed? And while Team Milizia won the last leg here, it's Team Holcim PRB still looking strong with a 5-point lead that the Swiss team generated with 2 leg wins. Team Milizia have some ground to climb if Will Harris wants to take his team up from second to the top spot, but they're moving that way. After their leg win here, it's pushed them ahead of 11th Hour Racing Team and moving the American boat down into third. Bioterm is currently in fourth. Skipper Paul Mayer very keen to see what the lighter winds of this leg mean for their lightweight boat. Lastly, Guyot Environment Team Europe now focused on fighting hard after retiring from the last leg. The boat is ready, the crew are hungry for the points that lie ahead. Fingers crossed, their bad luck is behind. Well, there we can see the boats out on the water. Their head sails are there, filled up. The mains are up. Slightly different decisions made by each of the teams as to exactly the right way to attack this racecourse. And those decisions are going to keep being played out over the 5,000 miles to go. Sam, talk us through what we are looking like with this course coming up here for this leg.
So the course is going to start off with an inshore section, which is very much like the import race. It's a rectangular course where we're going to have a reaching start. Around Mark 1, Mark 2 is going to be a jibe, and then another reaching leg, attack. And it's going to be 2 laps of this course. They have to go through the start line each time, and then through between Mark 1 and 2 as the leaving gate before they head offshore up towards Newport. So there's no other marks until they get really near the finish.
I mean, that animation pretty much did it justice there, didn't it, Sam? They are off, they are back out into the open seas, and it feels like quite a while since these boats have actually left the safety of the shore. We've been seeing them playing around here in Itajaí, the pro-ams, practice, or the import race, but this is it. They're going back offshore. We can't see it, but they are packing supplies, water, food for a lot of days at sea.
Yeah, Niall, I think it's in theory about an 18-day leg. So yeah, it's a long leg. Some of the crews are tired. The boats have come off this really long 38-day Southern Ocean leg. They've also got to change mode, go into the lighter wind mode, the shifty conditions. So yeah, they're packing the boats for a long leg, but really concentrating on the weight on board and trying to keep it to a minimum, I think.
Well, there we can see Bioterm and Team Holcim PRB. And when we're talking about lighter winds, we're talking about the conditions that what you say are sort of laid out as we go on board Bioterm. This boat here with skipper Paul Mayer and the new crew lineup, they should be feeling confident here, Sam. Conditions suiting the design of the boat.
Yeah, definitely, Niall. Yeah, having been on board Bioterm, it's a boat that was just a little bit too young, so hadn't really had the time to test the systems. But now, you know, with this big 2/3 of the way around the world, that's a lot of testing time for them, and we've learnt a lot. And I know this boat is really designed to excel on this next leg, so I'm sure Paul and the crew are really looking forward to really testing it and being a little bit more, you know, up at the front of the fleet and playing for the win.
So, I mean, also worth pointing out here, like you said, this boat is feeling confident. It looks fantastic. I'm looking at those red foils sticking out from the port and starboard side. They were not quite in bits, but they were needing a lot of repairs, and a lot of these boats have had an awful lot of work going on here. And if my eye's right here, we're seeing some new sails as well. That mainsail on board 11th Hour Racing Team looks very crisp to me, potentially fresh out the wrapper.
Yeah, I reckon they've used that new sail card for that mainsail, and I think that's the right choice to make on this long light wind leg. It would, you know, they've got to play that card now to have a chance to win.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All boats
So the countdown has started. 5 minutes to go for the start here. Right now, the boats are testing the area, having a look at the conditions, deciding whether their setup is right. They've probably got just enough time if they do need to make a critical change. And there are some differences there, Sam. 11th Hour Racing Team, 3 head sails up, furled, ready to go. Guyot Environment Team Europe, 2. We're on board, well, we're looking now at Team Holcim PRB, Annemieke Bess on the bow with the headset on. And I can see 1 bare cable on Team Holcim PRB. So difference in sail decisions right from the off.
Yeah, so that difference will be the fact that some boats have chosen to have a J3 and up there to be a potential stay sail. But if you have that, then that's extra drag, air drag.
3, 2, 1.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see who gets it right. And of course, 11th Hour Racing Team do have quite a few sails up there. They can make those decisions. The race course that we normally see here for the leg departures, it doesn't really put that much emphasis on changing sails as you go around those short, tight corners. But once we get out into the wider seas, we should be seeing those sailors having more decisions to be faced. And Sam, you know, before we came on air, as we go on board with Guyot Environment Team Europe, you were saying that after they pass the leaving gate, it's not going to be going in a straight line. They're going to be faced straight away with some important tactical decisions.
Yeah, Niall. So once they leave the leaving gate, they'll be heading off upwind. There's more pressure offshore, but to get there, you have to, you're head to wind. So there'll be a choice to make. Do you tack and almost sail away from the mark, away from Newport on port tack if it's quicker to get out offshore into the new breeze, and they're heading towards to sail around this high pressure, which will give them a right hand shift. So they have 2 reasons to potentially tack onto port as they come out of that leaving gate and really head east to get offshore and to play that shift.
It's going to be interesting to see exactly what they're thinking and what they're getting ready for. Right now, of course, they're just focusing on that start line. And as the helicopter camera moves around, we can see that everybody is lining up on that starboard jibe. Ahead of them, you can see the white-hulled committee boat. And just on the left-hand side of the picture, you could see the starting mark. It's a white mark with the bottom of it blue. These 2 marks that are in picture at the moment are actually mark 3 and 4. They will be coming round these marks to signify pretty much the end of the first lap, and we have 2 laps to go. So Guyot Environment Team Europe to windward of the pack, 11th Hour Racing Team behind the European boat, slightly to leeward. And this was the position, Sam, that we saw for Guyot Environment Team Europe getting pushed over the line, above the line. They are now, I can see now, Benjamin Dutroux desperately trying to get the bow down to leeward. They do not want to make the same mistake again.
Yeah, it's always tricky keeping these boats moving in the light wind, and they're really close to the shore, so there's tide to be taken into account as well. And yeah, it's hard to choose that right run up into towards the line.
And this is a reverse now, isn't it? Guyot Environment Team Europe are to leeward. That's where we saw 11th Hour Racing Team for the import race on Friday, and they got a fantastic start down there. But of course, it is risky. If a boat goes over you and steals your breeze, everyone is going to roll over you. So it could be the winning move, but it could also lose you an awful lot. It's Robert Stanjek on the helm for the start, just on the bottom right-hand side of picture, and his eyes are glued on the competition because those half boat lengths forward or backward are going to be crucial. Right now, all of the boats, as we get into that final minute, are creeping towards the line. Guyot Environment Team Europe on the right, Team Holcim PRB just above them, 11th Hour Racing Team slightly bow forward with their big head sail ready, along with Bioterm and Team Milizia as we go on board with Team Holcim PRB. Annemieke Bess, already an ocean race sailor from the previous edition, calling in the positions to the helm, to Kevin Escoffier on the headset. 11th Hour Racing Team starting to go over the front. This is going to be critical now for the Swiss team. Team Holcim PRB do not want to be so far forward. They're going to be early to the line, but look what's happening. They're too far back. Everybody now rolling over the top of Team Holcim PRB. They're not going to find any breeze in there. 11th Hour Racing Team, they nailed the distance to the line. The start line is just to the right-hand side as we get to those final few seconds. Guyot Environment Team Europe very close to the line as well. This is the final push to the line. Watch the flags to see if anybody is over. Bioterm also with a strong start, slightly to windward, and it was right on the line for 11th Hour Racing Team. There were no seconds left on the clock, and I didn't see any flags signifying anyone was over. That is a sterling start for Charlie Enright, fighting for every single last meter. I mean, Sam, there was a lot at risk there.
So that was, yeah,
on board now. Hang on.
They're both being recalled. So 11th Hour and Guyot have had an individual recall. They were over the line early. So both of them are going to have to go around and recross the start line. So that gives Bioterm a really, really good start, and maybe Holcim PRB escaping.
That would look like it was going to be absolutely perfect. And if they were over, they were only over by the narrowest of margins. But there we go. It means that they have to keep clear of Team Holcim PRB. They have to cross the bows cleanly of the Swiss boat. And now, as you say, they'll jibe, they'll come round through that line, and this is going to be a long way back, because look at this, out in the lead, Bioterm and Team Militia with some good breeze, some good heel there for the German boat. It looks to me, Sam, like we've almost had a little bit of a wind shift here, and the breeze is almost slightly more on the nose for this first reach. The boats certainly look quite powered up.
Yeah, they do look powered up, which is great. Obviously, that's going to give them a real head start, and it's going to be a struggle to go around for Guyot and 11th Hour to restart. That's going to be a big loss to them. But yeah, great shots here of them reaching to Mark 1.
Well, after that start and after the disappointment for Guyot Environment, Team Europe and 11th Hour Racing Team being called over the line and having to sail back through the line, this is probably a good time to bring in Mark Towell. There's a team member from 11th Hour Racing Team, and Mark, I did want to bring you in under other circumstances, but here's the replay from the virtual. I mean, this was close to the line here.
Yeah, incredibly close start. Obviously a game of inches, but you know, both our team and Guyot Team Environmental clear the line and make sure they're getting back on track as quickly as possible.
It's going to have to be a pretty quick recovery, but of course we are talking about 5,000 miles left to go for these teams.
Absolutely. This start and this first hour of racing here is really, you know, a bit of a procession for just, you know, the fans and followers along, but ultimately all the teams on board will be focused on the leg ahead and the complex decisions that will be coming in later this afternoon and this evening.
Well, the first scalp goes to Bioterm at the moment. They are getting near that first rounding mark. We're about halfway along that top reach with Team Militia just to windward. And Sam, you know Paul very well here. We don't often see him smiling. He's always concentrating in these races, but he's got to be feeling pretty good about that view behind him.
Yeah, he's got a great start. Paul is pretty much always pulls off a great start. But yeah, he'll be concentrating, and he knows that this leg is really, really long, and you just can't stop concentrating until you cross that line in Newport. So a lot of work to go. But yeah, of course, they'll be thinking of that first mark, getting that jibe in, getting the ley line to Mark 2. But he's got a great crew on board with him, and you saw Marie Rioux, who's an Olympic sailor, who will be backing him up on those tactical decisions for this first part of the leg.
Well, right now the speed is with them. 10, 11 knots here for Bioterm. There's the foils that have had so much careful work, stripping the carbon back, getting them strong again after that collision on the water. I think it was the foil on the other side, but they are matched again. Finish and everything, they are looking absolutely superb, and I know that Paul's been feeling very confident about this. Sam, give us some indication, because it's interesting to see, as you say, the crew standing at the back of the boat on Bioterm, standing on the back, head out while they're trimming. Marie Rioux standing back there. On Team Militia, Sea Explorer, they're all tucked down below. What's the difference between trimming with your head out of the breeze as opposed to sticking it up into the conditions?
I think it's definitely, you get used to trimming inside or outside. Obviously Marie, she's just stepped on the boat. It's new to her, and it's pretty weird when you're not used to sailing on these mockers in the closed cockpit. So I think she's doing the right thing to get her head out the boat as much as possible, and the conditions allow it. A lot of the time you just get nailed if you've got your head out the boat. So she wants to see that sail trim, and as I was saying, she's looking out for the breeze as well to help Paul, who's really concentrating on helming the boat. So she's looking around, forwards, up to windward to see any breeze and wind shifts that might come. So with biotherm, you can get your head out easily, so it's a good thing to do in this first part of the leg.
And it's the same on board Gouye Environment Team Europe, Benjamin Detreux. Let's listen in on board. You can just hear Annie Lush down below just calling that work in here. We've got two IMOCAs with much more open cockpit styles, Biotherm being one, Gouye Environment Team Europe certainly being another one, being the oldest boat. And right now, for Biotherm, whatever they're doing, it's working well. They absolutely nailed that start. Head up into the breeze right now. They're trimming that boat well, and they've got breeze. At the moment, further back, 11th Hour Racing Team and Gouye Environment Team Europe are not matching the conditions that this French boat is finding right here. Paul Meyer out in front. You just see the head of Marie-Rioux just down to leeward, just poking out, trimming that enormous head sail. And, you know, Mark, just how fickle is the breeze out in the bay? Your team have been out here all this week racing, practicing. What are the conditions like out here?
Yeah, it's a really tricky afternoon with the southwesterly breeze right now. There's going to be a convergence line offshore, and so the teams will be, you know, while they're doing this course, keeping their head out, looking for that cloud line and anticipating the easterly breeze that's to come. That is the long-term breeze for the leg. And you know, in these next couple of hours, there's a big decision to make as soon as this inshore course ends, whether they stay inshore and try to maximize what's left of the southwesterly, or whether they just punch through that cloud line and try to get into the new easterly breeze.
Well, before they get to that point, it's all going to be about these tight corners, and Biotherm have hit the first one. There goes the bear away, easing that big head sail at the front, still with the pressure to take them down. And normally at this point, they would become vulnerable, but Paul Meyer has done a good job pulling out some distance from the boat behind. Let's have a listen in on board. Team Militia next around, second place at the moment, and of course important to remember that Boris Herman stepping off this boat, and it's Will Harris stepping on board. And Sam, we know that this boat is a very different design, and by my eye they seem happy. They seem to have engineered more heel on that boat for that top reaching leg. Is that potentially a sign that this boat simply needs to be sailed differently due to its shape?
I think everyone's probably looking to heel a maximum on those reaching legs, because it's so hard to do the maneuvers, and you can see they've all got the windward foil out, so getting some heel on not only reduces drag, it's also hull drag, it's also getting that windward foil out of the water, and again reducing more drag. So you can have more or less heel depending on how much you cant your keel. So it's not necessarily just the wind or the weight of the boat. There's many factors in how whether you're heeling more or less, and you know, even with foil rake, so the working foil, if you put more rake on, then you're going to heel your boat less. Even doing, you know, these lower speeds, 10 knots, it does make a difference.
And it's exactly like any of us would experience if we were racing our small one-person dinghies. You put your weight down to leeward. Here you can swing the keel down to the wrong side. We always think about those keels being up to windward, but you do have that little fine adjustment, I guess. And Gouye Environment Team Europe and 11th Hour Racing Team will be looking for that little adjustment. They are, right now, they're a long way back, but let's not forget, in this kind of racing that we have seen here in Itajaí, these tight corners, these two-lap race courses, we saw some very late place changes. And just now for Biotherm, about to round Mark II, having completed that short downwind. Their lead slightly less now than what it was, but that, I mean, Mark, that could just be the compression, the nature of that downwind section.
Yeah, absolutely. There's usually a bit of compression on this downwind leg. It's an interesting one because it is a downwind run. In a longer race course, we'd be putting up bigger sails and trying to maximize the ability to go downwind more efficiently. But because the run is so short, we're using these same J0s, and you know, it's just there ends up being a bit of compression there at the bottom.
Well, Gouye Environment Team Europe still chasing at the moment, coming round Mark I at the moment, now downwind with 11th Hour Racing Team chasing. And I guess the big question is for fans of 11th Hour Racing Team and Gouye Environment Team Europe is, what are the conditions going to be like closer to the shore? Well, down on the water, we have got Romain Julien, the IMOCA class measurer. He's been watching all of the action down there. Let's go down to him for an update. Thomas is down on the chase boat. They might be moving at the moment. They might be repositioning. Let's see if we can get a little update from him about the conditions on the water. Well, we'll come back to the chase boat. Clearly, at the moment, they are moving quite rapidly to try and keep up with the Imokas, even in this light breeze as we go on board now with the 11th Hour Racing Team. Let's see if we can listen in. Sam, again there, interesting to hear, to see, we've got Francesca Klapčić on board 11th Hour Racing Team, head out of the cockpit, looking for that breeze. They're not happy at the back here, are they? They're looking for any advantage they can find.
Yeah, for sure. They're looking out, and I think all the boats are just like we saw on Biotherm as well. Taking advantage of the fact that the water's flat, there's no waves coming over the deck, so you can actually get your heads out the boat to look for the breeze, but also to check the trim. Obviously they're on that downwind section, so they're soaking as low as they can go. So Frankie will be talking to Charlie to help him feel the boat and see if he can soak a bit more before the jibe. So great communications between them, and I saw that Frankie, she's got the headset on too, so the guys inside the boat will be able to follow what's going on with the comm systems.
And they won't have to look too far to see the job that's in front of them, because Biotherm is right now over 250 metres ahead of second place with the 11th Hour Racing Team back in 5th. Guyot Environment Team Europe in 4th. Team Holcim PRB are in 3rd. Team Milizia are closest to this boat, but look at this, Mark. I mean, a little bit of breeze, a little bit of a change of conditions, and suddenly that boat shifts a gear. Yeah,
we saw on the virtual tracker there, the speeds popped up. I saw 16 or even 17 knots, and it is just spectacular. An increase of a knot or two in pressure, and all of a sudden these boats just take off.
Well, Team Holcim PRB are hoping for that breeze as well, along with Team Milizia, but just how strong is the breeze? Let's see if we can get Thomas Julian, a Mocha class measurer, to give us an update from the chase boat out on the course.
Yeah, it's a very lovely day for racing today. We have very nice breeze and sunshine. Very interesting for me is the fact that some boats elected to go without the J3 but the baby stay instead, which gives them a little better aero for sure, but it will mean when they need the J3, it's a much longer maneuver than just unfurling the J3. So Milizia and 11th Hour Racing elected to go with the J3 sets, while the other 3 boats have baby stays instead. And that's an interesting trade-off to do.
Yeah, very interesting trade-off. I mean, Mark, that's a clear difference there. I guess short-term gain, long-term gain.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another interesting thing to pay attention to as we get these great shots from the chase boat here is the difference in shape of some of these J0s. There's big choices when you look at the aero package, and we spend a lot of time talking about the differences in the hull shapes between the boats, but there are dramatic differences, particularly with the sail. Some boats have more upwind, flatter design sails, and others a bit deeper for downwind sailing. So interesting to pay attention to that.
And I know that some of the boats have been swapping in those sails, those different sail shapes. There's been some interesting decisions been going on the water, and of course we will see exactly how that plays out, not only in this tight racing here on the import, but exactly what happens on leg 4. Of course, the sailors are quite cagey about the decisions that they make. Sam, I'm not going to ask you to betray any trust here, but I think I can understand why the teams don't want to let the other teams know what sails they changed, what sails they brought on. I mean, it is something that they're pretty protective about, including your boat, Biotherm, right here.
Yeah, definitely. So we can use, well, on any leg you have 8 sails on board. No, you're not allowed any more than 8. And in the whole ocean race, you're allowed 3 extra sails that you can bring in whenever you want. So there are options to replace a sail if it gets lost or completely broken, or options to have different shaped sails for different areas and different legs with different conditions. And yeah, for sure, I know that the boat we're seeing right now, they have a definitely a different sail wardrobe on this leg from the sail wardrobe we had on leg 3.
And we'll see exactly how that plays out. I mean, it's interesting to see the shots of the sails up and wonder which ones are new, which ones they already knew that they were going to have. But, you know, Mark, we just had an update from the race officer. They're going to extend this course a little bit. I mean, the breeze is in.
Yeah, it's great news for the racing here, but I think really what the sailors will be thinking about is what does that do for the longer-term weather situation. There's going to be that big decision after they go through the leaving mark, and it's quite a decisive, you know, it's a big call that the teams need to make. So with the increase of pressure, what does that do for that decision? We'll have to see.
For Bioterm, they have increased their lead over Team Militia in second place. So this boat here leading at the moment, and if the course extends and they keep performing in this way, we could see the leader stretching further. And as we go in for attack here, Mark, there's an awful lot of work to turn this boat here.
Yeah, interesting to see them go for the furl. I think, Sam, you were talking about the other day that you guys preferred on this boat to go through for the blow-through drive. But I guess now we're seeing a bit of maybe that was a halfway in between the two strategies. But yeah, you know, back to Friday, obviously the two boats that had issues tacking were the two at the back, so still have to keep that focus on clean, crisp maneuvers.
Now here we can see some defensive action on Mark III going into that upwind section. Team Militia really massively luffing the boat here. I'd love to know who's on the helm of Team Militia, whether that was Will Harris on the tiller or, as we've seen before, Nico Lundgren. But either way, they gave up distance there, but they have locked Team Holcim PRB. Sam, you know, that's aggressive, smart tactical play.
Yeah, it's aggressive. I'm pretty sure it'll be Nico Lundgren on the helm of Militia. So there's two reasons. Obviously, you want to get the inside line and not let Holcim PRB inside. And that also helps the trimmers trim on that J0. Now the breeze is up. When you're going from reaching to upwind, it's a big grind to get that sail in to upwind trim if the helmsman doesn't help you. So Nico will have done that obviously as a defensive move, and the trimmers and the grinders will be sighing a sigh of relief as they got that to help them get that sail in.
At the conclusion here of the first lap of the start of leg 4 in Itajaí all the way to Newport, Rhode Island, it is Bioterm in first place, but this is the battle for second, with Team Militia locking out Team Holcim PRB, forcing them wide, forcing them to follow the play of the German boat. And now, Mark, we see that difference in tacking style, and very different from what we saw from the race leaders a moment ago. No furl.
Yeah, no furl on Militia there. It ends up making a big grind to get the sheet back in when it comes around, but obviously you don't have to do the grinding with the furl, so it's sort of 6 one way, half dozen the other. What we're seeing now here is Militia was able to get their bow through the wind and onto port tack, but the sail's quite eased, and that'll be for a big grind as they get back on the new course.
Team Militia in second place, a second place that they have tactically won. We've just seen Nico Lundgren running from the leeward side to the windward side. The tiller on Sea Explorer, the German boat here, sitting on the roof of their coach room. Very different setup to what we see on some of the other boats. It's extra weight, but it's weight that they are happy to take. It keeps the ergonomics pretty simple there, Mark. I mean, a good decision?
Yeah, I think the inshore ergonomics of the Militia boat in particular are the most interesting. They're actually the only boat that have their helmsman entirely on deck. Everyone else is sort of half in the cockpit, half not, in different configurations. So that allows Nico to be up on deck, have the breeze on his face, looking around, but you know, challenges as well potentially with communication with the rest of the crew.
Bioterm in first place, just putting the bow up a little bit just to try and find some breeze. It's been coming up, it's been going down, and in this section of the course they're slightly tighter to the short line, so we can expect the wind to be a little bit more fickle as we're having a look now at Team Holcim PRB with Annemieke Bess putting her weight over those guard wires, trying to look forward. They're all wired up with a headset. And Annemieke Bess here, Sam, I mean, this is a sailor that does not come into this competition with an awful lot of IMOCA experience, but she is desperate to make sure she is bringing her racing experience to the boat, as I'm sure all of these sailors are. And with Charlie Enright on board 11th Hour Racing Team, that link that we're seeing from the sailors through the headsets to the people on the bow, it's so critical, Sam.
Yeah, it's critical, and just going back to Annemieke, she's a great sailor and with a lot of experience. She's really strong, and I think she'll give it everything. and I'm sure she's going to fit in really well with that crew. And her physical strength will help her get used to life on board Newport, which can be a little bit violent when you're not used to it. So I have no doubt that she'll get into it quickly and be really useful on board.
4 boats now on that top reach, most of them sailing through that start-finish line, the signal, the close of one lap and the opening of lap 2. But there's an interesting thing going on at the back at the moment with 11th Hour Racing Team. They have tacked out of view on the left-hand side, and they're very high compared to the other boats here. I mean, Mark, you know, it's silly, of course, to forget that this is just the first few miles of what will be 5,500. So potentially, we have seen boats before needing to tack, needing to jibe, needing to maneuver in a way that conserves the sails for those future miles. Potentially something going on here.
Yeah, potentially. Unfortunately, we didn't see it on the coverage here. Looks like they're getting back up to speed, just over 11 knots. But you know, it's a great point. Now we saw that Cape Town, right? Again, big emphasis on the maneuvers, and in our case, bad jibe and heavy air resulted in having to pause for a few hours, and that put us on the back foot for the leg. So, you know, all of these small details matter, and I'm sure Charlie and the team will be doing everything they can to get right back to the front.
You can always tell what's happening with the weather when you go back on board and you see whether the helmsperson is wrapped up in a jacket. Those down below working pretty hard because they're on the pumps. They need to be doing all of that grinding. But Simon Fisher and Damien Foxall around down there. It looked like Francesca Klapčić was doing the trimming with Charlie Enright on the helm. These are the boats that are in front of the American boat. Guyot Environment Team Europe in 4th place with a bit of a stretch before they get to 3rd and 2nd. Team Holcim PRB and Team Milizia in that battle with Bioterm in 1st place. And Sam, you know, I'm guessing here, you know, with Bioterm, that lead seems to be stretching. The battle for 2nd and 3rd with Team Milizia slowing Team Holcim PRB, not wanting to let them go. It's playing into the hands of the race leaders at the moment.
Yeah, the Milizia and Holcim PRB are fighting their own little battle, and for sure Bioterm are bringing out, lengthening their lead. Obviously it's only the start of a very long leg, but it's always psychologically great to be out in the front when you head off through that leaving gate. And well, great for Paul and the team to have a good, clear inshore part to make up for what happened in Cape Town, where we had to go and go back in and repair.
On board now with Bioterm.
Nice to see Mariana having a good time there. I'm sure she's putting in plenty of effort on the grinder, but all smiles. Happy boat makes a fast boat.
And a very nice way to start your first offshore leg. Alan Roberts, the UK sailor on board this boat, you know, an incredible sailor, but wanting to prove his worth on board this team to themselves, really, as sailors. You get out there, you want to put your first step well and strong, and look at this right now. I mean, in terms of battle, in terms of who's putting those first moments in their own pocket, it is Team Milizia. Team Holcim PRB almost looked like they were getting over the bow, but then the German boat just came up a little bit higher, and there, Sam, as you say, it's Nico Lundgren on the helm, and Sam, you've got to say, he's playing a very clever match racing game here.
Yeah, I think those two boats, there'll be a lot of concentration and a lot of stress. I know that both Kevin and Nico are very, very competitive sailors. You can see, is that Chris Pratt, I think, just behind Nico as well. And they'll have forgotten that this leg is over 5,000 nautical miles. They'll just be trying to get round the next mark ahead of the other one. Probably occasionally someone on board might remind them that they need to not do anything too stupid and take care of the boat around this short inshore part.
Bioterm in the lead at the moment here for the inshore section of leg 4, the departure from Itajaí. Paul Meyer sailing out towards that first mark, the first mark of lap 2, the same one that they rounded before, and they had a lead the last time they were here, but that lead has built even more since then. 663 meters is the gain for Paul Meyer. Will Harris, the skipper of Team Milizia, in second place, a little bit behind. And Mark, you know, we have seen from some of the other shots, the sail shape on board, biotherm, small differences here. It seems like it's all adding up for something quite good.
Yeah, the biotherm boat just looks great going through the water right now. I think it's one of the lightest boats in the fleet. You know, it's shown its true colors today. Look at that shot, just accelerating as they bear away around the top mark there.
Paul Mayotte steering the boat, going round. And it's so important on this bear away. When you turn off the breeze, the speeds come down, and there is a finesse in keeping that power and keeping that momentum as long as possible. But the temptation here is to not bear away far enough. And Sam, I mean, with these IMOCAs, how hard is it to turn down off the pace and watch those boats behind kind of close up?
Yeah, it's tricky. You've got to bear away enough though to. It's a VMG downwind leg. It's a very short one. So if you stay too fast too long, then you can let someone else get an inside turn and shorter distance, so you can actually lose out miles. So you've got to get quickly from fast mode to a downwind VMG mode. Now we can see them jibing on the ley line, so it's going to be a big grind for Alan and Mariano in the cockpit, and it'll be interesting to see the next leg once they're round the second mark here. Looks like the breeze is a bit more in, and we could see some good speeds and some foiling on the next leg. So they're doing this jibe. It's always hard with only 4 people, so only 3 crew members who can work the grinder and the winches. So you generally jibe the front sail first and then the main afterwards.
Jibe completed for the race leaders. Biotherm, Team Holcim PRB now coming round, and you can see the difference in the sailing angles that the boats enjoy on that top reach with the pace. Can Kevin Escoffier carry this pace for those extra few boat lengths onto that downwind course? He's gone very low after this first mark, and of course it's probable that he's more concerned about Team Milizia. And in fact, the last time that we checked in with these boats, it was Team Holcim PRB just in third, pretty much bow to bow, but they were slightly to windward, and it looked like Mark, that windward position played out well.
Yeah, it looks like Holcim was able to get over the top of Team Milizia there. And you know, this next leg, it'll be all about making sure that they can maintain that position, take a nice conservative ley line, and set themselves up for a strong reach at the end.
This is the overtake that we saw a few moments ago with Team Holcim PRB exploiting that windward position. And Sam, you can see in the virtual eye replay there, it was the moment they just got their bow forward, just started to affect the breeze of the German boat to leeward. Once you get a boat blocking the wind in your sails, I mean, the damage is pretty much done there, Sam.
Exactly, and it's really hard to. There's nothing you can really do. You just have to suffer through the bad air with your gas masks on, and then try and get back up into clear air as soon as you've been rolled. But obviously with these boats, whilst you're being rolled, obviously you slow down and you've got to get that momentum back up again. So generally you lose quite a few boat lengths. A bit of a frustrating moment for Milizia.
Frustrating moment for Team Milizia, but they're not giving up this fight here, Mark. I mean, it's interesting to see just how close that cross was.
Yeah, quite a close cross there. Holcim was able to pull it off, but it did look like for a second that Milizia may have had a piece of him on starboard. Obviously, a port starboard in the beginning of a 5,000-mile leg isn't exactly what you're looking for, but all clean so far on the water.
I mean, it's amazing that we're getting port starboards, of course, at this section of the course, and we do expect that, but I remember you getting port starboards on Alba Medica in the middle of the Southern Ocean. I mean, the rules come into play just when you don't want them to, wherever you are.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how long the race is. Everybody's pushing, you know, it's a game of inches, and they're pushing as much as you can,
On board the virtual eye now, coming into that bottom mark. Team Holcim PRB wanting to cement that overtake that they did on the closing stages, that top reach as Guyot Environment Team Europe. Now coming round and onto that downwind section. Now here's the jibe for Guyot Environment Team Europe. A good chance for us to compare manoeuvres here and compare styles. I mean, Sam, the benefits here of not furling, I'm guessing just a little bit easier ergonomics. I mean, easier, not quite the right word, but a decision that all of the teams seem to be following.
Yeah, generally when you can jibe without furling in a really pretty light breeze. maybe have someone on the bow helping sail around if it's really light, but most of the time the J0 will get round to jibe without having to furl. It's the tack that's harder, and where boats generally tend to furl up and then redeploy, and unless there's really enough wind to blow the sail through. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's not really the sails as well. I mean, we talk about getting the sail through. That's the big one that we can see, but there's travellers, there's runners, there's potentially foil controls as well, although we're seeing them leaving them both out. There's an awful lot that goes on just to turn this boat through 90 degrees.
Yeah, for sure, and that's, inshore everything's being simplified a little bit, but once you get offshore then you've got lifting rudders as well, so you've got to remember to get the rudder down before the jibe. Foils, the new foil out, the old foil in, and that's not thinking about what the stacking and the ballast. So the inshore racing is a little bit simplified to be able to make it around the course in time.
Well, right now, Guya Environment Team Europe are hoping to keep that simplicity with their boat, try and get a few boat lengths back in their pocket, along with 11th Hour Racing Team. And Mark, obviously your boat, Charlie Enright, skipping at the moment at the back for now. We've got a chance to watch them jibe here. We have seen in all of our offshore legs, we have seen boat lengths turn into miles, turn into days of lead here. I mean, if you could talk to Charlie Enright on board here, advice here from yourself, what should be going through their minds?
I think I'm pretty sure what Charlie's thinking is, what's coming down the track. It's interesting to see this shot right here and see the cloud line, or the bit of cloud coverage inshore, but really as we look backwards offshore, that's going to be that main area of focus, and understanding where the cloud convergence line is, how that's going to play out, thinking about setting yourselves up for this evening and the next couple of days.
Amory Ross on the bow. He's going to be somebody that's going to be bringing us the news of those next couple of days, and a little bit of a sea state starting to build here as 11th Hour Racing Team on that softer downwind section. We can see the waves rolling down. Once the American boat turns this Mark II, the second time they have gone round it, then they're going to be able to power the boat up onto that bottom reach. But at the moment, the rest of the fleet are all safely round, and you can see how much the difference in pace from the downwind section to the reaching section stretches out the fleet. And it is still Team Holson, PRB, that is in the better position from Team Militia in third place, with Bioterm out in first place. And this is playing into the hands here, Mark, playing into the hands of this boat here, Paul Mayer. Leave the rest of the boats to duke it out.
Yeah, we've seen Paul do a nice job in a number of the leg starts. He led out of Cabo Verde quite nicely, and it seems to be able to keep all the maneuvers clean, despite the fact that had relatively less time with his boat. He's an incredibly experienced sailor, has a good team around him, and they're doing a nice job.
Doing a fantastic job at the moment, building that lead meter by meter. Now over 900 meters to the advantage of Paul Mayer. Team Holson PRB far more concerned at the moment with Team Militia. I remember in the closing stages, of course, leg 3 coming in here to Itajaí, these two boats locked horns, but it was the German team ahead. It was Team Holson PRB that lost the leg into Itajaí here just in the last really 24 hours. Right now, the advantage with Kevin Escoffier. And Sam, for all of these boats here, this moment right now, in any sailboat race, when you've got a boat just on your hip, stealing your breeze, attacking you so violently, it's incredibly intense. I mean, does that intensity stay when you go offshore and you remain this close through the day, through the night, and through the weeks?
Yes, yeah, it does, but it's really exciting, and it's great to be in visual contact with another boat when you're offshore, days or weeks into a leg. There's nothing better to help make your own boat go faster than to have another boat next to you, and so yeah, it's intense, it's stressful. I think the difference between this at the start, you've got the 4 crew members all working together. Once you go offshore, then you get, you push quickly into the watch system, so it's an intensity that you can actually escape when you go off watch, and hand that intensity over to the person that takes over from you. So it's livable with, and more in a positive way, yeah, for sure.
I think that's the perfect description of what they're going through. It's livable. It's not comfortable. It's maybe not even pleasant, but they can just about survive it right now. now it seemed like the biggest thing that was annoying Mario Ryu was the drip coming from the top of the coach roof. But this is a crucial moment for them. They have built up nearly a kilometre to their advantage. Now they are coming round the mark at the end of the bottom reach. They have got a short upwind before they go round Mark 4, back through the start line to signify the close of lap 2, and then through that leaving gate and out to the open sea. So now the sails coming in, they are tight to the breeze, and then they have got one tack to go, and they've got no pressure on them right now, Mark. They can just tack safe, calm, and with an awfully comfortable ley line into that top section of the course.
Yeah, they've built up a nice lead to the point where they can be quite conservative with their maneuver here. Big emphasis on just doing that nice and smooth, not breaking anything. One last tack, and then the reach through the starting line and off onto the leg. One thing I think is worth pointing out for those technically following along, in the 65s and 70s in the past, we used to switch between winches and the pedestals with buttons on the feet. And you may have seen Mariana just pulling a small string there on the pedestal. There's a string system which allows you to switch between winches on these boats. So a little bit different from the boats in the last couple of races.
It's so interesting how the ergonomic decisions that all of the teams have made really played out. I mean, one of them, of course, Team Olsen BRB, the simple ergonomics of fitting inside the coach roof. I mean, when they decided on the height of that coach roof, they measured the skipper. I mean, he is a force to be reckoned with, but let's be honest, Kevin Escoffier is not the tallest sailor in the fleet, so everybody else on this boat does have to hunch a little bit to get inside.
Yeah, I think Paul's back's probably suffering a little bit more than Kevin's. The physios will be earning their money in this race.
We're on board with Team Olsen PRB. Let's stay with them and see if we can listen into the action as they come up to round the bottom of the course.
It's pretty interesting to see that Kevin had his, looks like an iPhone on his arm, and it looks like he's probably got the race, you know, a little, maybe an application, so he's got his own race course, and he can see that on his phone, so he doesn't have to rely on the comms from inside the boat to see where he's going.
Yeah, I think it's probably that Ventus system. It helps a lot when you're in his position. He's got the view out of the boat, able to see the breeze, but he has absolutely no instrumentation. So having that on his arm, quite a big asset.
Small things all adding up, making a big difference on board at the moment now with Team Milizia. There you can see that tiller system on top of the coach roof. They actually remove it when they're offshore just to give the solar panels maximum access to the sun, but it's so comfortable on board this boat. That is a solid position to be sitting in there for the helmsperson, Nico London.
Yeah, and you mentioned the solar panels, Niall. I think from an ocean health perspective, it's worth pointing out that all these boats utilize a lot of renewable energy technology on board. Whether it's solar, I saw that Biotherm's actually got 2 hydro generators on board, and those can be incredibly efficient at generating energy as well. The solar will be a big feature in this upcoming leg, crossing the equator and going through the tropics, much more so than the previous leg.
One more tack for Team Milizia here to finish off that short upwind section, as Biotherm still in first place and Team Olsen PRB tacking in second place here on the start of leg 4. Now we are in the closing stages here. There's only a few more corners to go for half of our fleet. Guyot Environment, Team Europe, round the bottom of the course. They have got one more tack, one more running to go, and then behind them, 11th Hour Racing Team. The big question will be as we shift into the next section of the race, the miles in open sea, as to what these sailors are going to make of the conditions. Let's listen in as they get ready for this tack.
It's quick, the tack is in 12 meters.
Three boat lengths to start.
Okay, you say for the attack, I go inside.
Okay.
Guyot Environment, Team Europe getting set up for the tack. Let's see if we can go down to the racecourse area from the chase boat with Thomas Julien, the Imoca class measurer, out there following all the action right from the side of the boat and get an idea as to exactly what is going on right now as this in-port section of the race seems to come to a close. And in fact, actually, just before we go down to Thomas, Sam, just seeing some interesting things here on Team Milizia. A big harden up net there. Any guesses as to what was going on?
Yeah, it looks like they were struggling to trim on their J0. Obviously, the wind is up. They're at the top end of the range of these sails for these angles. Maybe they had an override or something on a winch that they couldn't grind, so Nico would have luffed up to unload the sail, and actually luffing up like that's the quickest way. Then you can hand over hand pull it in, or use your first gear to get a lot of meters in. And even though the luff slows the boat temporarily down, it's actually quicker in the long run to get up to speed by an easy trim on, so to speak.
Sensible play then for Team Milizia, knowing when to come off the gas and think about the long game, as Guyot Environment Team Europe round behind them in 4th place, and 11th Hour Racing Team getting themselves set up for their tack. Let's go down on the water now to Thomas Julien and get an idea as to what the race is looking like from the water.
Yeah, I'm next to Biotherm at the moment, and it looks like the wind is picking up slightly because I can see the main coming off a little bit. It's important to note that during the inshore section, they most probably won't use the water ballast as it takes too much time to transfer and to fill and empty. But I'm guessing now that they're on course for a little bit longer, they'll start to fill in the water ballast, maybe pull the windward foil up and get really into an offshore groove now.
11th Hour Racing Team are going to be getting themselves in that offshore groove now as the boats finish that tight inshore rounding as the leg 4 from Itajaí to Cape Town gets underway. Mark, 11th Hour Racing Team complete their tack, their last tack of this section of the course, and it looked to me to be a little bit of a slow one here. Still cautious sailing, thinking about the miles ahead.
Yeah, slow tack, but got through, all clean. I think interesting to note that they have 4 sheets on the J0 right now, the red sheets and then those yellow ones, and they're probably getting themselves set up to be able to, move the sail from the inshore course with reaching an upwind to potentially more of a downwind setup in the longer term.
This is, I guess, what Thomas was talking about, and Sam, it is something that with your Imoca eye, you always notice as well, as we see Biotherm about to go through that leaving gate and out into the open ocean. This is the moment when all those other toys, the foils, the water ballast, rudders coming up and down, everything can start coming into play as you've got a bit more space to use it.
Yeah, and I think maybe right now as we're watching, we might be able to see that windward foil slowly being ground back in and get that offshore setup. I know the questions that everyone's asking, when do you change to the J2? In theory, the next mode will be more of an upwind mode. The wind will be building, but it's still going to stay really shifty. They're going to have to play the shifts, keep their eyes out the boat. Yeah, as you said, maybe we'll see the windward rudder come up and maybe some sails get moved around the deck. So yeah, there's lots of work to be done to get the boat from the inshore course kind of average setup to optimize that starboard tack offshore.
I remember this moment. What's going on Biotherm right now? You've just had a whole week of preparation. You've been anticipating the leg. You've just finished the inshore race, and now the inshore portion of the leg departure, and you're getting off. It's time to settle into that watch system, get the sails stacked, get into that watch system, and get into the rhythm of offshore sailing. The simplicity of the 4 on 4 off. That's a big part of why all these sailors keep coming back.
And we were called OCS together with 11 hours. This is a pity, but we did a nice race here. No mistakes in the maneuvers, and we are actually back with the game.
Back with the game, says Robert Stanjek, the co-skipper of Guya Environment Team Europe. And Sam, for a team that has not been in the game for, what, over a month? I mean, it must feel fantastic for that boat to be back on the water and in the mix.
Yeah, it's almost 2 months since they've been in the race, and yeah, for me, I was so happy to see them finish the import race, and just psychologically for them, that's a big step back into the race, and they must be so motivated and so excited to be back out there with everyone else. And I'm sure they do have that psychological advantage over the other teams who maybe are a little bit more tired and worn out. So they'll be loving it.
Mark, it's just interesting here, as we know that all these boats are enjoying these conditions, as Sam was saying here, the toys that they've got to play with. Look at that mast there with that radar system that we've got in front. I mean, the mast it's twisted, it's a rotating mast. That's very interesting for a trimmer to be able to play with.
Yeah, the wing mast there, without any spreaders, it allows the mast to rotate, and it's another control, a really important control system for adding depth to the mainsail and also reducing aero drag. The radar, an incredibly important tool, not only for safety, but also for identifying clouds and weather cells, which, as they're going through the doldrums, or even with what's coming up in the next couple of days, is going to be utilized quite a bit.
Sam, I know that you're very much a navigator. You understand the science of exactly what's going on here with all these systems, radar systems and satellite images of what's going on. How much preparation have the teams, specifically the navigators as well, how much have they done to understand what is coming down the racetrack?
They'll have been looking at the weather for over the last 5 days to prepare this leg as much as possible. Obviously, once you take the start, you're not allowed any outside help, so there's no weather routing allowed. It's just the skipper, the navigator, the crew on board who download the raw weather data and who make all the decisions themselves with the routing. So you look at everything to prepare your road book, so to speak. They'll have been looking at currents. Obviously, there's at the end of the leg there's the Gulf Stream, but before that we've got some really strong currents around the northeast coast of Brazil. There's a lot of oil fields, so there's other obstacles to avoid, some exclusion zones. There's even whale migration zones to take into account. But yeah, the weather is really, really important, and I think over the next 3 or 4 days it's going to be really, really shifty, and you've got an idea of the large-scale pattern, but what is going to make the difference is the local stuff, so the shifts, the rain squalls, and that's what we can see, as Mark was saying, with the radar, with the latest weather information, so we can download real updated satellite photos. And there'll be, and I did see I had a look at the Biotherm pre-race briefing, and one of the things they did say was that they need to get their head into the latest weather files as soon as this inshore leg is finished. So before the night falls tonight, they'll be downloading weather as soon as they can, any minute now.
Another big feature in the weather, Sam, will be the Sargasso seaweed, and we've seen a lot in the news recently, even in the global news, about the increase in the Sargasso seaweed related to the increase in sea surface temperature. How the teams deal with that's going to be a big challenge. I remember in the last couple of legs we used to essentially jibe the boat to clear the rudders and the weed off the keel. With these boats, much easier to pop the rudders up, so not as much of a problem. But we do have these incredibly large foils sticking out the side, and that Sargasso seaweed can really slow the performance down. So getting it off the keel is going to be a big thing.
I think we're going to be talking about that seaweed a lot, because of course you can't really cut it away. I mean, Sam, what on earth are the tricks that you've got to get that much weed off your keel?
There's a lot of tricks. I'll stop talking if we hear any news from onboard Holcim here. The Sargasso is really hard to deal with, but luckily with foiling, so one of the best tricks is just to fly as high as possible, and then the weed will just drop off.
Easier said than done, and I'm sure if it doesn't drop off, you're going to go from 25 knots to not very many, but I guess that's why you're brave enough to get out there and get on this race course, and I'll just be happy watching it. I mean, Team Holcim PRB at the moment, you can see just how that ride is changing. We saw with Bioterm as well, the slop, the swell that's coming in here. I mean, Mark, we're moving away from the coast. A little reminder for the sailors, it's been lovely and warm and comfortable here in Brazil. It's going to change.
Yeah, and just a quick shout out to Itajaí and really all of Brazil. It's been an incredible stopover. The local communities come out in force. There's been so many people in the village, and the energy and enthusiasm for the event, it's just been incredible. So thanks to everyone who's come out. Interesting to see the gap open up here between Holcim and Malizia, who, you know, 1 lap ago, as we remember, were overlapped, and now quite a bit of distance between them. But again, big focus on what's coming for them. As Sam said, I'm sure the navigators are now down in front of their computers, looking at the weather, probably getting some satellite images, trying to understand where that big transition's coming.
Sam, it's interesting to see the difference in sails here. And just looking at Team Malizia as we come round here, that head sail there was trimmed in incredibly tight here. I mean, are we expecting them to stay on the breeze, on starboard tack for a while?
Yeah, in theory, we're now going into upwind mode. The wind is quite a lot further right than we thought. So they'll be staying there. We shouldn't see anyone tacking just yet, but there are options to tack over onto port tack in the weather routing that we've been running before the start. So they will be going into upwind mode in building breeze. So yeah, sails trimmed in as much as possible, and weight forward, maybe ballast tanks being filled, and looking to see when to make that change to the J2, which is essentially the good upwind sail as soon as there's more than 10 knots of breeze.
And the more changes to be made, the more decisions that are available for you, obviously playing into the hands of those boats behind, that's when you want things to shake up a little bit here, Mark. I mean, interesting to see how different are the sails here, but 11th Hour Racing Team chasing the pack at the moment as we sail away from the Brazilian coast.
Good shot at Damien Foxall there. He's our newest crew member for this edition of the leg, or this leg of the race. 7-time veteran of the ocean race, and great sailor on board. Yeah, here we have this heli shot looking offshore. Again, I keep going on about it, but this cloud convergence line is really going to be the first of many features in the leg, and there'll be easterly breeze on the other side of that. So as Sam said, we could actually see the boats sailing away from Newport back to the south, as they initially tried to just get to that easterly breeze as quickly as they can.
And already a little bit of a difference as to how they are using that breeze. Team Holcim PRB far tighter to the wind, far closer to the breeze. Team Malizia as well doing exactly the same. Bioterm, Sam, a lot more bow down, happy to keep the speed high, and these small gauges that open up don't always seem like much at the moment, but they can have a big effect later on.
Yeah, obviously it's again that shift between sailing the inshore course and very close to the other boats, and working out when to change mode. And obviously it's when you're the first boat, the lead boat, you have to make the decisions without seeing anyone else, and then the boats following you can see how it works for you and decide whether they want to sail a little bit higher and slower, or a little bit lower and faster, depending on, you know, how the lead boat is panning out. And we've got obviously the visual, but on board we also have AIS, and so we can see the tracks of the boats, we can see the speed of the boats on our computer screen. So we're analysing that permanently, and so you make your decision as to how you trim your boat and your mode from what you're seeing around you.
Right now what they're seeing around them is that building swell, and you know, you talk about the modes here, Sam, but I guess that a lot of the boats are kind of forced into one mode or the other, depending on the decisions that have been made earlier on today about what sails they're taking, but potentially about decisions that were made even before then in terms of the shape of their boat and exactly how it is balanced. But the decisions at the moment that Bioterm have made are still playing out very well. We saw that lead up at around about 900 meters, but it is still pretty strong, just a shade under 800 meters. It was between them and Team Militz at one point. Now Team Holcim PRB is firmly in second place, looking very strong, stretching away from the German boat. In third place with Guyot Environment Team Europe in fourth, and 11th Hour Racing Team back in fifth place as we stretch our way away from the Brazilian coast. So this is the point now where our teams can start sailing a little bit freer. We are out into the open sea. The next mark of the course, the next point that they have to worry about is a very long way away. An enormous distance between them and the point, all the way out towards the northeast. 500 miles to go before they are forced around another corner. And within those 500 miles, plenty of decisions to be made, potentially even some tacks, as Sam was saying, see exactly what the breeze is going to do here. But Mark, there is a bit of a procession here, but by my eye, it really looks like Team Holcim PRB want to be as close to the breeze as possible.
Yeah, it definitely looks like Holcim PRB is a bit sheeted on, a bit more sheeted on than Biotherm as an example. But I think bigger picture, the thing to keep in mind is that all the boats are headed offshore. In some of the weather briefings I sat in on this morning, there was the option to stay inshore, and there was the potential for a big split. So at the moment, it seems like consensus in the fleet about how to attack this first part of the lake.
Beautiful shots here of Bioterm just attacking these conditions. Sam, we've spoken so much about different boats suitable to different legs, and as we can see here with Paul Mayer's boat, the windward rudder now up, them getting themselves properly set up in offshore mode. How confident is this boat, your team? How confident is Paul Mayer that he's got the right boat for these conditions?
This is the leg. This is the leg he's been looking forward to. I think, you know, the Biotherm was a young boat with, we didn't have any time to practice. The systems weren't tried and tested, but now they are. And you know, the boat's 2/3 of the way around the world, and so he's getting more confidence in his boat, and he knows that this boat is a rocket ship in these conditions for this leg. So he's had time to fix all. With the team to fix all the damage. That's the only question. I don't think they've had the time to get everything repaired, so they'll have prioritized on that. So let's just hope that you know, they've managed to get what they needed to get fixed and up to 100% and done. But yeah, if that's the case, then Paul and his team are going to have a great leg.
It's a nice moment for the shore team to see just how much their hard work has paid off. Paul Mayer at the moment leading out from Itajaí, and he gave the onboard reporter a few words about how the race is going so far.
Yes, really happy about this race, but the race is not finished. We have 70 days or maybe more in front, but it's good. A lot of public here, and it's good for the team, you know, to start well. Good for the mind. We see that the boat have a lot of potential in this kind of wind, so that's good for this leg and the end of the race.
Cool. Good luck.
There's that Paul Mayer smile. It doesn't always come out, but if anything is going to put a small curl to the side of your mouth, it's going to be the position that they find themselves in at the moment. Sailing out into the increasing breeze, into the swell, and stretching away from those boats behind. This boat right now leading after a very well placed position on that start line and some good racing around those tight corners. Stretching away, bow down, happy to be in that slightly fast forward mode, as behind them it looks like the rest of the fleet are more concerned with being defensive about the boats next to them, but enjoying the conditions at the moment. I mean, Sam, I'm guessing that Paul Mayer and indeed all of the sailors on board your boat, you know, you had an awful lot of fun even with the hard times on the last leg. Paul Mayer sailing well and looking happy about it.
Yeah, he's a really good leader, and I think he's got a really good approach to the race, and maybe coming in with a young boat, less pressure to perform, that definitely helps. But he's I think he's made the right choice of who to surround himself with, and leads the crew with in a way that everyone feels like they've got responsibility on board and contributes. The communication works really well, and everyone, I think he chooses people who want to be there. And if you're doing a race like that, it's hard, but yeah, you've got to want to be there to give it all, and if you want to be there, you're happy on board.
Happy on board and happy with this performance of Shaw. And further back in the fleet, Guyot Environment Team Europe in 4th place. Let's have a listen here from the words from Benjamin Dutroux, the co-skipper.
Are you happy with the start?
Yeah. The start was too early for us, but it was. We have do a good comeback, and we have done a good maneuver, and the team is doing well. So early start, but we are in the game, and I have a very good feeling.
Again, happy there from Benjamin Dutroux, another skipper in this race that's feeling pretty good. And I think he said it there, they are not leading, but they are in the mix. And I think that is the big thing. Ahead of Guyot Environment Team Europe, we have got Team Militia and Rosalind Kuiper on board, of course, the sailor that we all remember seeing with that bad head injury on the last leg. But right now, doing quite well in the water, locked into a battle with Team Wholesome PRB. Let's have a little bit of a listen from Rosalind Kuiper about this opening stage of leg 4.
Start, Rosie.
It was okay. It was intense. It was okay-ish. We start was good. Like we worked quick up the line, and if we made a mistake, so Wholesome could catch us. But we're in 3rd position now, so it's a good start. And it's a long leg. I mean, it's not just an Newport race, so much more to come. It was good so far. We're ready, man.
The tone from all of our sailors at the moment pretty much the same, that happy that things are going quite well, but always reminding themselves that it's a long leg, keeping their emotions in check, making sure that they are ready for the marathon that lays ahead of them rather than the sprint which is now behind them. So Team Militia in 3rd place at the moment, sailing off, but it's a different story at the back of the fleet at the moment with 5th place 11th hour racing team, of course, over the line along with Guyot Environment Team Europe. They are chasing down Guyot Environment Team Europe, chasing down Team Militia and chasing down Team Wholesome PRB. But for the moment, for the American boat at the back of the fleet, they still have a little bit of a distance to go, but they're up to speed now, just a shade under 11 knots as the breeze will be building for this team. They have got 5,550 nautical miles between them and the finish line, and of course remember that this is the boat that is sailing into their home port. Simon Fisher is the navigator, tasked with finding all the advantages out on the race course, and he spoke to us a moment ago about how things are going so far.
Sci-fi eager out of the box, but obviously a long way to go to Newport. What's the status after?
Nice inshore lap. Pretty good at getting going. Maybe a little too eager. We had ourselves right on the line, so it's one of those 50-50 calls. But no sweat. Nice recovery, and now we're just following the boats out, just a couple of minutes behind. So just got to work our way out to this convergence line now. So in some ways it's quite nice having a few pathfinders in front of us, letting us know how the wind goes. But
All good. There you go. Simon Fisher, always very confident there, Mark. He seems he's very steady in his emotions.
Yeah, Sci-Fi is the definition of steady Eddie. He's he knows how to not get too high and not get too low. But I think one thing I'm just really picking up on is the overall energy and mentality of all the sailors. I think it's a very different situation than the beginning of the last leg, setting off into the Southern Ocean and everything that happened. With this leg, we're back in the Atlantic Ocean. We're headed up the coast. We know that the leg's going to be relatively light wind. I think under 1% of the leg is meant to be over 30 knots, which certainly wasn't the case in the last leg. So the sailors are relaxed and, of course, focused and competitive, but it's a different task that's ahead of them.
But it's going to be a warm task, certainly for the next couple of days. It's just so nice to see them out of those difficult conditions in the Southern Ocean. Sam, just watching now, it looks like Francesca Klapčić just to leeward, just talking through the trimmers from that position at the back. It's so nice to be able to, I'm sure, be on board these IMOCAs and be able to sit out and have the breeze on your face, expecting all these sailors to be trimming the sails to within an inch of their lives for the next, what, 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think I always like Annie Lush's phrase, it's a trim off, and that is what it's going to be. But it's interesting to see that even in this short course, the difference between some boats, your head's out and you're soaking wet, like Holcim PRB. I saw Kevin was completely drenched. The same with Paul on Bioter. Nico Lindven on Malizia, he's completely dry, and I saw they've even got their hatch open above the cockpit because the boat is so dry. So looked like Francesca on 11th hour, the same. It looked like quite a dry boat, and but yeah, big differences between whether that head outside is going to get wet or not.
On board now with Team Holcim PRB, currently in second place, and we can hear from the skipper Kevin Escoffier about the race and how it is opening up for the Swiss team.
A bit of turning left, the wind tacking, then the wind will increase, we will change sails, tacking again before to go north to the north-east point of the Brazil.
Oh, there you go, short and sweet. But Sam, he's doing exactly what you were saying here. He is already thinking about what's ahead. The inshore section, that's all behind him.
Yeah, that's all behind him, and yeah, the inshore section's a small formality compared to the length of the leg ahead of them, and I think this first night is really important, and it's right that he's thinking about that because there are going to be lots of gains and losses to be made right from this first afternoon, this first night. The next 3 days it's going to be so shifty, and there's this general strategy of the big picture, but what they're going to have to deal with is these clouds that we can see and the rain squalls and the shifts, and it's going to be local navigation and a lot of hard work to play those shifts and get that right.
A lot of shifts, a lot of hard work. Team Holcim PRB are certainly in that fight, pushing out towards the northeast off the Brazilian coast. It has been some pretty impressive sailing at the moment, as we can just see Bioterm in the background, just as Team Holcim PRB and the other French boat. A big difference in their sailing modes. Team Holcim PRB sailing high, Bioterm out in the lead, and this is where they are at the moment. Bioterm right now in first place with Team Holcim PRB in second, and happy to keep Team Malizia in third place. Guyot Environment Team Europe in fourth, and 11th Hour Racing Team in fifth place. Both those teams having to return to the start line after a tricky start here in Itajaí.